Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, we have a big show for you. We are going to talk about Shohei Ohtani, probably the biggest story in sports right now. His whole situation with his former interpreter Ippei. He had his press conference yesterday. We're going to break all of that down and more, as well as get into some NFL news. There has been some more JJ McCarthy hype. I heard something ridiculous today come from NFL Network saying that he was going to be possibly the second overall pick in the draft. That's insane to me. We're going to break down all of that and more, trying to figure out why he's getting all this hype. L'Jarius Sneed signed a 4-year, $76 million deal after being traded to the Titans. He's there for the long term, a lockdown corner from last season. We'll break all of that down and more, as well as the other gambling situation that broke the other day in the NBA with the Raptors player. So we'll talk about all that. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMC Sports, GSMC Podcast.net. Leave a tip or donation. If you do leave a message with it, it'll pop up on the bottom of the screen here for you, me, everybody watching around the world to see. We appreciate everything that you do give. Once again, link to give a tip or donation is GSMCPodcast.net. Like I was saying, though, we're going to start off with what probably is the biggest story in sports, and that is Shohei Ohtani. With MLB opening day just 2 days from now, Thursday, MLB officially kicks off. I know they already had a couple of games, the Seoul series between the Dodgers and the Padres. They split that series there. But the official opening day for the MLB season is on Thursday. And with that coming up, MLB has found itself in a scandal. Their biggest star, their biggest player, Shohei Ohtani, the face of the league right now, the guy who just signed a $700 million deal, is in the midst of a gambling debacle. Gambling and sports have a complicated history. Gambling and baseball have a very complicated history. You go back to Pete Rose, who's one of the greatest baseball players of all time in hits. He's still up there in hits. He is banned from baseball forever for gambling. Shohei Ohtani and his ex-translator now, Ippei, Shohei claims that Ippei stole more than $4 million from him to pay off gambling debts. It's a lot of money to go to gambling, $4 million. It takes a bit to get up there. But it's kind of a little suspicious. Ippei and Shohei are reportedly very good friends, right? And just to steal $4 million from one of your friends, I know that's a line that's real tough to cross, especially if you actually are friends. But outside of that, the wire payments were made in Shohei Ohtani's name. And the bookie that was the illegal bookie that they were using was using Shohei Ohtani as a marketing, saying that Shohei Ohtani bets with me. So there's a couple different layers to this story. Shohei Ohtani came out yesterday, almost exactly 24 hours ago, did a little press conference. He didn't take any questions from the media. He had a prepared statement. It was read out by his translator. Coaches, teammates, general manager were all there to support Shohei Ohtani. And the gist of what he said was, I didn't do it. It wasn't me. It's heartbreaking. I can't believe that my friend would betray me like this. So he didn't say anything that broke news. He didn't say anything that was earth-shattering. He didn't bring out any new evidence that proves it wasn't him. And I don't want to sit here and be a conspiracy theorist, right? I don't want to sit here and be like, Shohei Ohtani definitely did it. But there is an investigation being opened into it. And I think we don't know the full story. In fact, I'm very certain we don't know the full story. As much as what they're running with right now, in at least from the reports I've seen, that's been confirmed, is that Ippei did it. Shohei had no knowledge of any of this. I find it really hard to believe that Shohei Ohtani, he might not have done the actual gambling, but I find it really, really hard to believe that he was not at least aware of this situation, that he was not at least in the loop that, hey, Could I use some money or something like that? You know, there is I find it I find it really hard to believe that Shohei is completely innocent in all of this. And I'm not wishing ill on anyone. This is obviously all alleged. They're doing an investigation right now. Law enforcement is part of this. This is like an official criminal investigation into everything. The MLB has to do their own thing, but the MLB has said that Shohei Ohtani is playing. And I know it's a bad look for them to sit their best player, their $700 million man. But I feel like baseball, especially under the current regime with Rob Manfred, they need to stick their foot down. They need to make a hardline call on this, because we'll get into this a little bit later, because there's a whole nother issue with gambling. And I've talked a little bit about this before on the show. There needs to be a disconnect between sports gambling and sports. There has to be, for the sports industry to survive. I really think the sports industry, you look at it now, it's a juggernaut, right? You can't possibly picture these giant organizations, these centers of cultural icons, being gone in the next couple of years. Not the next couple, but 50 years from now, that they're gone, and it's a completely different landscape. I cannot picture that. The one thing that is threatening that is its relationship with sports gambling. And I want to make this very clear. I'm not against sports gambling. I participate in sports gambling. It's legal here in my state. I dabble. I'm not going to give you advice. I'm not the greatest at it, but I dabble in sports gambling a little bit. But it's concerning to me how intertwined that sports gambling has become with not just the sports industry, but the sports media, the entire sports landscape. I mean, fantasy sports, I love fantasy sports, but it's kind of gambling as well. There's just not really as much money involved. It's such a slippery slope, and you need to be really careful. And gambling, these giant sports gambling apps and companies, they're just snaking their way deeper and deeper into these organizations because they have money, and these organizations are a business. But it's really dangerous. It can fundamentally destroy sport as we know it. I think that gambling is the biggest threat to sports as we know it right now, and it's in its infancy. If you can regulate it, and not saying it's a bad thing to have. I'm all for legalizing sports gambling. I am. I support that fully. But I think there has to be a separation between these sports leagues and these sports gambling companies. There can't be an official sports betting partner of the NFL. There can't be. It can only lead to bad things, right? You start to see these effects. You've seen players, and we'll get into it. The NBA had a situation with one of their players that's was basically tanking his own stats. He was doing his player props and stuff, and that got flagged. They're really good at flagging it, and I give them credit for it. But what if they? It just really is a slippery slope, and it really concerns me. I can see this going horribly. Now, the best thing that can possibly happen for this is that they stay separated and they're two separate monoliths. They're kind of connected in the same way that I don't know. They're kind of connected, but they're separate. They have a relationship, but they're not sponsors of each other. They're not supporting each other financially. But for sports gambling, they have to be at least a little connected, and I understand that. But they need to stay as far apart from each other as they possibly can. There can't be that much overlap, because then you lose integrity, and without integrity, you lose sport. I think it's not a sport if there's no integrity. It can be an athletic feat, it can be entertainment, but it's not a sport if there's no integrity, and gambling threatens that integrity. Shohei Ohtani, I hate to say he needs to be made an example of, because he's the best player in baseball, and what I really think is going to happen is nothing. I think baseball is just going to do nothing. Rob Manfred is going to turn the other cheek because it's Shohei Ohtani. Now, you have a completely different story if this was, say, I don't know, Clayton Kershaw, just sticking with the Dodgers. A star in his own right, but he's on the other side of his career. He's in the twilight of his career. He's one of the greatest Dodgers of all time, one of the greatest lefties of all time, one of the greatest pitchers of all time. If it was him doing the situation, and I'm not implicating him, just a name that popped into my head. I think baseball would punish him. Honestly, I do. But since it's Shohei Ohtani, I don't think they're going to do anything, and I think that's a mistake. I really do. I think they need to do a serious investigation, and Shohei Ohtani needs, if it's found that there's anything, that he was involved in anything, he needs to be suspended for a good amount of time. Like I said, baseball will be destroyed by this if he gets no punishment. I mean it. It's a very dangerous thing. But there's still a lot to come out. Keep an eye on that story. It's very fascinating to me. This is one of those things that I think can really shape the landscape of sports for the future. It can really help shape exactly how these things will be dealt with. The NFL has done a very good job. They made an example out of Calvin Ridley, and they've done a very good job of stopping gambling from getting in their sport. I'm very impressed by what the NFL did. I think they did a great job. Now, the NBA is going through it as well right now, and MLB needs to make this decision, because if they want their league to survive for another 100 years, they need to figure out gambling policy, and they need to figure it out now before it gets even bigger than it already is. Anyway, we'll get more into the NBA part of this, because that's also fascinating to me. This is one of the things that interests me the most about the sports industry right now, actually. So we'll dive into all of that coming up in a couple segments down the line. For now, in our next segment, we're going to start talking about the NFL new kickoff rule, which I'm very excited for. The implication on some of these players that might get signed, we've already seen it a little bit today, actually. But we'll get into all of that and more coming up next on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. We'll be right back.